This is the Non-Tech Podcast, conversations about education, technology, and culture, with Dr. Doug Reed and Dr. Matt Stranick. Thank you for joining us.
My name is Dr. Doug Reed, and I am located in Abagway, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people.
My name is Dr. Matthew Stranick, and I am on Treaty Number 8 territory, the traditional meeting grounds and gathering places of our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest in the Non-Tech shows. With me, as ever, the inestimable Dr. Doug Reed. I am Matt Stranick, and really have an interesting topic for show number 75. I'll maybe just draw a little bit of attention in the opening moments to those who are experiencing the video format of the show, that this background is either photo or photorealistic AI. I think actually it is photorealistic AI because I asked for the AI output from Gemini AI for a representation of the Miramichi River in New Brunswick, which is a pretty significant waterway in my home province. And as well, I had an interview because there's a new interview series kicking around, Writers on Writing, that I'm just throwing out a promo to right now, wherein I got to speak with my really good friend, mentor, I would even say, dad to my best friend, just a really awesome dude, Chuck Bowie, about his writing practice for the show. And so this background, the Miramichi, shows up in his legacy of work because he's from the area himself. Point of fact, I was actually born in Miramichi City, what is now Miramichi City, Chatham, right? So this is actually a very significantly rendered. It could just be, something that's spit out by a digital output. And yes, it certainly is. And yet the context makes it significant. And that's been kind of what's been on my mind lately, right? Coming out of the end of the semester, coming out of where I've been teaching from, and just sort of where some of the online activities that I've been kind of on are kind of leading me here. So this is good timing for this topic, Doug. My standpoint on it by way of anecdote will hopefully be clear by way of your further elaboration and contextualization, good sir.
It came from a phrase you said in a previous
Well, and what is the topic?
episode.
Because we haven't directly said it yet.
Repossessing the jargon.
There we go.
Is the topic name, and it was you dropped that phrase, and I really liked it. I thought that it was something that deserved more attention, more investigation.
Well, so I'm glad that it resonated. I think it's a good one, as far as these things go. Happy to have the opportunity here to speak to this a bit further and some of these awesome references that you have pulled together out of this. Was there anything else that was kind of on your mind before we kick into Atkinson from 1872? Going in the way of that machine, the first one, my friend.
Nothing. I was so happy that I found an article from 150 odd years ago.
Doug's got a really lit collection of digital ephemera and various terminology associated with it, including which any chance to use something extremely old as a legit reference for the show, it's always a win for the notes part of it, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, it was one of the early ones, and I love the way people use language then to write academic articles before journals were really the thing that they are now.
Oh yeah.
And so Atkinson in primary school education talks about how curious young minds are until we deaden them. And it's, look at all these marvels of creation, which we do our best to spoil for them with our learned jargon and our grammar rules. And I thought, wow, does that hit the nail on the head? That
critical dissatisfaction on methods which don't really align with a proper educational purpose. I mean, it's good to go back this far in the literature and seeing that. I guess that's probably been an aspect of what scholarship and practice in our area generally across the history of the endeavor. But that's a good one, man. Good observation there.
Well, that's everything as old as new again. So this is 150 years ago, and somebody's writing it down saying, yeah, this matters. I found an article, the Peel Library at University of Alberta, they have an online section that's all the old newspapers from Alberta. Like every single community, even if something only lasted a couple of months or if it lasted for 100 years, they've digitized all of them.
Oh boy, that's awesome. See, I love stuff like that. I love, like, if I had the access or the wherewithal to kind of just spend an afternoon lurking around in those old newspaper archives and stuff. I mean, well done. I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, there was a great one that I found from the early 1870s, late 1860s, and it was about the attacks on Christmas and why is it Xmas and how come they're taking Christ out of Christmas? It's like, okay, that was 170, 150, 160 years ago. And so still having that same conversation and publicizing it for that long, I think Christmas is okay. I think Christmas is safe. It's a thing. Putting an X there is not.
I think there are people who, in the early stages of Christianity, were thrown to the beasts in the arena of Rome and just killed in relentless, mercilessly bad ways for these sort of Anyway, contemporary Christians are their own special case. I'm not going to go anywhere overly controversial here, I don't think. But discrepancy between act, intention, and wow. Talk about missing the point sometimes, right?
Ooh. Oh, yeah. And this is Good Friday, so it's a holiday. It's a day off. And
I'm even wearing my best white T-shirt for you, bro. That's like,
yeah. And I think I always get in trouble, especially with my family, when I say thanks, Judas, for the long weekend. Some people do not find that funny at all, and I think it's hilarious.
I think that any religious entity or being or construct that can't withstand just like a little poke, or like if that's what's going to cause your concept to falter, then probably your concept does deserve to falter. It's that kind of thing, right? I don't know. Again, we're in the midst of an election right now. Without saying specifically too much, other than the fact is that one of our candidates, right? There are ostensibly 5 federal parties that run with reach across Canada, and so one of those people, one of the leaders of a significant portion of that, does not have a security clearance, right? So it's like, did you not anticipate the holdup? Did you not anticipate that the process might, and so to trivialize, as some proponents are, or to sort of make special, it's just like, well, how about you just hire somebody within your process that meets the requirements of an unchallenged process, because it's easy enough to do. You don't make excuses for your lack of your leader's lack of ability or lack of clout after you put him forward. That's actually not your leader's fault. That's on the people who put the leader forward without adequate vetting in the first place, right? First stage vetting should have said, oh, wait a minute. 10 years with businesses outside the country or whatever it is. I actually literally have no idea. And this is not meant to be a tangent, which I just
No.
But it's just, do you know what I mean? Like, just, well, there's a chance I might get this job. Here's a basic requirement of it. I'm just going to pretend like it doesn't apply to me. Like, or like that people will just allow for lack of scrutiny on that. It's just, again, right? It's just like, well, maybe you don't want it enough, or maybe they should find somebody who doesn't make this basic thing an issue. I think I can apply that particular mode to other sectors relative to a political contest. What I've really found myself thinking, just with the general kind of view of culture being where it is like, what happened to just like respect for just basic competence within your role? Like, just like, wow, the quietly efficient people. Whew, man, I love the quietly efficient people. I aspire to be. I can't be quiet to save my life. God help me. I've tried to be quiet about it doesn't work for me. I always think it's gonna, and then it doesn't. But the people who do, my God, it's just basic efficiency, right? Basic competence. Like make competence awesome again. How about that? That'd be a slogan I could get behind. There's a bumper sticker we could deal with, right? All this culture nonsense, all this stuff about bathrooms, all that, like, blow it out your ass. How about that? How about you stop using culture stuff as a smokescreen to hide your lack of planning, your lack of understanding of the political context you're trying to operate in, and the shady stuff you're kind of cutting with people to ensure you get the 5% margin to put you into potentially having a minority government, you dickheads. Wow. Sorry, that did turn into a rant. Should I edit that one out, bro? I don't know.
No, that's okay, because I'm going to pick at it a little bit.
Please do. I'll be quiet for a while.
No. As we're talking about jargon, the first thing I wanted to do with make competence awesome again is break it down, and that's MCAA. And I'm pretty sure MCAA is known for something else. Isn't that the abbreviation for like the movie codes, like PG-13s and restricteds and all that?
It could be. I was sort of trying to riff off of MAGA there, but could be.
Oh, yeah, I know where you were headed.
Well, that's the great thing. That's the thing with any cultural signifier, even like any turn of phrase. It's like it belongs to the receiver as soon as it gets there, and gosh dang, isn't it great when it comes back with somebody else's perspective on it, right? Speaking as an English teacher and stuff, right? For me, this stuff is interesting.
Yes, it also has something to do with contractors. Some sort of National Fire Association. Anyway, it just made me laugh, so I just wanted to bring it up. I knew where you were going with the abbreviation.
Oh yeah, totally, bro.
But it still comes back to what drives me nuts, right? It's like we have this chance to do such great stuff, and we gatekeep with abbreviations instead of us like helping people move forward. We're educators. Isn't that what we're trying to do? Is help people live their best lives, or help them learn what they need to go do the thing they want to do or they need to do. And instead, let's set up hurdles for them to jump over. And one of the hurdles is going to be learn our jargon. These things don't make it easier.
I really like how you describe that as gatekeeping with jargon. I couldn't agree with you more. The obligation of somebody who is trying to actually communicate effectively is actually simplicity, straightforward, and clarity, right? Once you start getting into things that don't parse well into just basic sentences without jargon or with a very, very minimal amount, from my standpoint, the only time you need to get into jargon is when there's just a specific disciplinary area, technical thing or function or process that simply, like it's a septum or, just like whatever, like the Latin is fine. There you go. It is what it is. But
Yeah.
people use language obviously with bad intention. People use it with propaganda purpose in mind, but then also
Yep.
just by way of like indoctrinating people and sort of keeping certain. We good? Yeah. Some. It has the effect of keeping existing hegemonies of power unchecked because everybody's just kind of drinking the same semantic Kool-Aid, which up until pretty recently, the internet's been actually really good at just replicating those hegemonies. But what I'm starting to see now, just my own kind of informal kind of experimentation and survey, kind of where I'm at, I am starting to see some fragmentation in terms of some of the ability of, shall we say, dishonest actors to be able to communicate as they would, because there are outside circumstances which are just causing the messaging to fail on its first act. And even the most stalwart people who want to defend something on an ideology have to admit that just through flawed implementation, that the concept can't be valid because the implementation is such a fail on just a practical applicable level. So to that end, across the social media sphere, such as pretty active in the space, I would say, participate in it as an observer and active, kind of doing a little bit of light subversive work just with my stupid websites and stuff. I mean, nothing I'm doing is particularly tricky or anything at all. Everything I'm doing is completely obvious and intended with humor. And if anybody doesn't see that, then I mean, it's just that's on them, because I think I'm making it pretty evident, right? Satire, right? Jonathan Swift, people like that. A Modest Proposal. I mean, I'm working within a literary tradition, even as far as it goes. I can point to any critique that I've been putting out about public entities through social media channels. I actually can back it to literary antecedent, you know? So I'm confident in my conceptual thing because I've given it a lot of thought, and the language that I use is consistent with that in terms of how I describe it to others, but also how I'm kind of moving the enterprise forward within the public sphere in terms of the sort of micro kind of aspects of it. Like, going to use these terms of jargon, but not these, because I don't want to say, something negative, pejorative about a transgender or something just to make some clickbait kind of thing. Like, rule number one is don't know who you're trying to communicate to, and don't fucking harm people with your rhetoric by using shitty metaphors, right? Again, bit of a tangent here, bro. Obviously, the topic that you brought forward here is of some significance, and for me, I'm finding some personal resonance for it, right? So,
yeah, no, that makes sense. It's years ago when I was a K-12 teacher. My very first year, I rented a room in somebody's basement, right? And so for the first year I was a teacher, I went home to the basement of somebody else's house, and they were really nice. They were super nice people and everything. And then one time they invited me up for supper, and they never did that, right? Like, we lived two separate lives. And I was like, hey, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. So they fed me, and then they're like, can you help us? And I was like, sure. With what? And they had two kids, and they said, can you read the report cards to tell us what the teachers actually wrote?
oh wow.
So I translated the report cards from like education speak. And so one young guy was great, right? Oh yeah, so you're this and this and this and this, and that was good. And then the other one, I read the second report card, and then I looked at the kid, and then the kid just looked down at his feet. And I'm like, yeah, here's what the teacher's trying to politely say.
Well, but then to that, I would say, I guess the response that immediately just came to my mind to play the advocate for the other side of this is, if the teacher needed language to make a point that was not clear, then perhaps the thing that was trying to be expressed lacked clarity. Maybe it's just the language was being used to mask a lack of clarity. And so I would almost say then that would almost negate any criticism implied therein within that frame, right?
Now, I had some friends that were teaching in Ontario
Okay.
back in the 90s and early 2000s. And there was a push there to force all report cards to be written in plain English. So not using any jargon. And the teachers I knew were losing their minds. It's like, we can't do that. We can't tell the truth on these report cards because otherwise the parents are going to lose it on us.
Well, and then it becomes a matter of you have to have language that aligns with assessment and curricular practices.
That's right.
And that magic word that anybody who's ever spent time in a post-secondary teaching and learning center, alignment. We seek constructive alignment in all of our curricular goings on. And that's exactly why when you're doing a doctoral thesis, or I think probably a master's thesis even, you are expected in the first chapter to have your terms, right? You have your, like, here's what I mean by e-learning. Here's what I mean by blended learning. Here's what I mean by connectivism, or what have you, just to pull some examples from my thing. And you just spell it out so that from the point going forward into the rest of the document, there you go, right? You've justified your use of language through your peer-reviewed references and your appropriate conceptual models, and thereabouts, right? It's like you put your equipment out on the table, just make sure you have everything you need before endeavoring in an organized fashion to the larger task at hand. So again, right, I completely am there with you on the need for this kind of consistency and clarity. The ed tech field is just abominable at it. We talked about this before. Largely, I'm not saying like vendors are terrible for everything. I'm just saying it's a monetized field. There's a lot of interplay between institutions and procurement of technology services relative to the endeavor. And so to that end, just out of not even planned necessity, but just out of what's going to happen when you engage with somebody else, is the language of the commercial product will enter into the educational sphere vis-a-vis its application, both within the IT framework, but then also within the curricular deployment as well.
Yeah, very fair. And that leads us to the Hollingshead 94 article, The Use of Jargon in Education. And Hollingshead did a history from 1920 to 1990 and presented some info. And some of it was the use of jargon in education is a problem when it's not used consistently, right? Yeah. The inconsistency limits how people within the profession communicate with each other and how professionals communicate with others outside the profession.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, we use certain words a certain way, but if it's not consistent, well, what does that mean? It's the double speak kind of thing. It's what do I have to say to get out of this conversation? And that happens so often, especially when people are trying to dodge issues. They're trying to just skate through and have everything be fine and have nobody be mad at them. And it's like, yeah, but you leave a wake of chaos behind you because nobody knows what you said and what you meant when you said that.
Well, it becomes a matter of when you are acting as a dishonest actor or with lack of conceptual clarity, which I think fundamentally at the end of the day is pretty much the same thing anyway. It's just one of the strategies to defend your lack of clarity will actually be to throw other people and make it on them to parse your jargon. And then if you get called on it whatsoever, you just start throwing them into arguments over semantics, over just individual uses, individual terms. And then that's at which point where you get sandbagged. That's where it's like, oh, okay, we're just going to spend the next 10 minutes talking about, you know, the use of the word the and what it meant in this particular context without even acknowledging the wider abusive, disempowering cultural power constructs that are within a contemporary work environment, for sure. And again, context specific, culturally bound, which you can't just sort of take a 3-hour meeting and plan it after like in one afternoon. You kind of have to be willing to sort of do an organizational scope. You have to like just make sure like, okay, within the school document, here's the terms, here's what we're planning to use, this is what we're planning to do, and just make sure everybody's on the same page, because otherwise it's just chaos. Chaos, Doug.
Well, it is. And hey, that's why people created dictionaries, right? It's, this is the word, this is one of the meanings, or this is the only meaning, or this is one of the 18 meanings. And if it was just an inter-office, inter-work professional thing, that's one level.
Yeah.
But we're educators. We have to communicate with students. We have to communicate with the other stakeholders. And they may or may not be educational professionals, but we have to figure out a clearer way. So we have evidence from 150 odd years ago that was a problem. We have Hollingshead that just took a look at from 100 to 30 years ago, it's a problem. And I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I'm pretty sure it has not got better in the last 30 years or 35 years.
Well, could be, but you know, then maybe not. So one of those.
Okay, I'm going to jump into this one. This is a tough name, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time. Loacher, 2007, EdSpeak, the glossary of terms, phrases, buzzwords, and jargon. And this was published in Teacher Librarian. And I love librarians. Right? I love the whole concept of libraries and librarians. So any chance I can to drop that in, I'm going to.
That is rad. Well done.
And one thing the glossary was good for is that they talk about this book is good reading when you have just a few fleet moments and when you've had a conversation with a teacher and not quite sure about the terminology mentioned. The bottom line is it's essential. So in 2007, people are creating glossaries because educators are not communicating words clearly, even though they might think they are, but they're just not.
Well, I think a lot of the role of the educator tends to be focused on the practical training. I think a lot of it is focused, particularly in K-12, simply, I don't say this pejoratively, but more just as a shortcut, the babysitter function of the role. So there's a lot of ad hoc terminology. There's a lot of terminology that's specific to certain sections of the endeavor within the institution. And so even just any kind of communicating vis-a-vis professional knowledge, say at a conference or whatever, journal publications or the like, I just think that definitely what you're saying lands, Doug, in that it is not even like agreement across the sector, but even just like within individual sort of institutions or sort of local parts of the sector, there might be lack of congruity, right? Because again, ad hoc terminology to reflect practices that are very, very, very culturally specific and contextually bound.
One habit I have, because I've taught and worked at a number of different post-secondaries, is I create a glossary for myself.
That's a great idea.
Or what the buzzwords were. My first day of teaching was, let's sit in the staff room, and everybody else has come back and they've just had 2 months off, and oh boy, nobody wanted summer to end. Like, you know that first day of teaching stuff.
Yep.
And they jumped into the buzzwords. So I'm sitting in, I had just got to the town 2 days earlier, and I'm in for my first day of meetings. And the first thing, like less than 5 minutes into the first day, people started talking about Barnett House and Barnett House this and Barnett House is wrong with that and Barnett House is working with the other thing. My Bachelor of Education did not prepare me for any conversations about Barnett House, because what the hell is Barnett House?
I was wondering.
Yes, Barnett House, and then they were starting to interchange that with ATA. Yeah, ATA and Barnett House, and the ATA did this and Barnett House did that, and I'm like, I literally had to lean over to the person next to me and say, what is the ATA? What is Barnett House? And the ATA is the Alberta Teachers Association, and Barnett House is the building that the ATA, the Alberta Teachers Association, has all their offices in. So it's literally named after some guy named Barnett, I assume. And yeah, so everybody just shortens it, the ATA to Barnett House. And it's like, well, Alberta Teachers Association gets shortened to ATA, and then somehow Barnett House is short for that again. It's like, that is not an effective way to do anything. And it just drove me nuts. So from then on, I did it. Like, I can find my list from Australia. Like, when I first moved to Australia, I had to handwrite it. And I found it once in a while. Like, somebody mentioned to me, they had a blue at work. And I'm like, you were drinking Labatt's Blue at work in Australia? And they're like, no, a blue is a fight. I had a fight at work. And I'm like, how does that happen? And then they're like, in the cartoons, when you see blue language, that means there was a fight. Well, we just took that and made blue the word for a fight. And I'm like, okay, I did not connect those dots. I just didn't. So this has been a habit throughout my life, is to connect the dots and create the glossaries. And I share them with people. I've had jobs where I've had 200 and more different words and how they're used at the particular institution. And then a new person comes and it's like, here's the link. These might help. They're alphabetic. And I've known some people have gone through during online meetings and checked. It's like, okay, that's what they're talking about. And have thanked me for it later.
Used it literally within the moment. Yeah.
Had to use it in the moment, because it was like, what? Because nothing's written down, because every place has its own culture. But it's just one of those things. So the fact that this teacher librarian is talking about how essential a glossary is.
Well, exactly.
And I know there's other places. Like, I know if you go out and you try to buy a boat, holy smokes, right? The language people use and the terminology that they use, or if you just try to get on a boat and help somebody sail, it's like, I got to learn all this language. Just tell me the red line or the blue line, or just tell me the red rope or the blue rope. Don't tell me it's the downhaul, right? Because you don't have that labeled. I don't know what the downhaul is on this boat. And they all mean stuff, right? And you have to, part of it is getting competent with wherever you're doing, whatever your profession is or whatever your task is. But educators, for some reason, seem to want to transfer that to the students we're working with, and to the parents, and to the other stakeholders. It's like, why should they have to learn our words? We're educated. Why can't we make the language work in a way that they can understand more clearly. Sorry, that's my little tangent.
Well, no, that's good. And again, anything that gets you through plain language, that will favor clarity. I'm thinking of the awesome American poet William Carlos Williams, who was active throughout the 20th century, first half. He passed away in the 1960s. Really famous, apart from being just a fantastic, phenomenal poet, modern poet, he was also a doctor. He was a small town medical GP, and he did the poetry just kind of as his own thing after the evenings and whatnot. And he is really famous for. He's noted for being one of these people who really wrote in the American vernacular, using slang. Well, not even slang, but just like the plain speech, and putting it into the format of poetry, and actually composing poems of very significant image, personal history, place, crafting it with just the speaking of people that he engaged with through his day-to-day medical practice in Paterson, New Jersey. And so, he actually had this really, really significant, moving, long suite of poems just called Paterson. Gave inspiration to a lot of the beat writers, who particularly then gave inspiration to people like the Beatles, who then subsequently went into this whole guitar-based music that occupied a lot of cultural clout for quite a while. Not so much these days, but still, right? It all kind of is of the same cloth when you start just looking at, let's actually allow people to have agency. Because again, I think that's a lot what we've talked about. Language, conceptual clarity gives you the ability to think about your vote. It gives you the ability to participate in your franchise. So lots on the roster here, Doug. I'm impressed.
Oh, yeah.
Quite frankly, that's all really good. Good stuff.
So the next one I want to take a look at is OSCAN 2018.
Yeah.
So we're 140 odd years since the first reference, and it's about using jargon books in teacher education contexts. So we're at the point now where we know it's an issue, people agree it's an issue, and they're coming up with strategies to overcome the issue rather than just fixing the darn problem. It's you have to adjust your practice to make it work, rather than us just deciding as a profession we're not going to do it anymore. But
right.
It's a jargon book is a terminology book through which pre-service language teachers keep significant terms and methods that are related to language teaching. So as the pre-service teachers are doing the practice teaching, or if they're in class, or if they're in staff meetings, they're writing down whatever random stuff comes out, and it's like, what's going on? What was that? So they're doing what I had to do, and I did it out of desperation. At least they're being guided to do it, and they're getting a structure. So good on them. I'm glad that in the 27 years since I started teaching, people figured out, okay, let's give them this, give them another tool in their toolbox to help them do what they want to do, because teaching's hard enough. You shouldn't have to reinvent everything all by yourself.
I just think that makes me immediately think that I would love to spend some time teaching pre-service K-12 teachers. That would actually be fun for me, except I wouldn't have the requirement behind me that I haven't even done 2 full years of K-12 educating. It's not something that would ever happen. But I remember
that's not a requirement everywhere.
Well, to the extent that it would be fun. I think it would be a fun gig at this juncture, 20 years in, to work in that kind of space again. Because I remember the 15 months that it took me to do my B.Ed. It was like the inventiveness that the instructors in that program threw at us. It included stuff like this, right? And so I was on my way to becoming an English teacher, I ended up doing just a lot of assignments and whatever based around that focus. And so I just, it was just such very, very creative times can be had in those pre-service teacher programs. And in terms of just engaging with them through the standpoint of being a teacher or the instructor of record or whatever, it's just, I would love to have that opportunity again. The times that I've spent in sort of similar or adjacent kind of roles, it's tight, man. So I guess really that's really my takeaway from that. Just nothing about the reading per se, but what the reading reminded me of there, pal.
Well, yeah, but that's our lives. Like I love teaching undergrads. I love it because their goal is to become teachers. They're enjoying it. The younger ones don't know what they're doing, right? Like a lot of them are in a BED program because, well, they know what teachers do and they know how to become a teacher, and they have some teachers that they like. Some of the older ones, I've had people that were as old as I was.
Yep.
And they were doing it because they had gone down a path and they made the conscious choice. Nope, that's not for me. I'm doing this. So it's still seen as a noble profession, and it's still seen as being one of the caring professions that matters. So I have all the time in the world to work with people like that. I love that. That's why I get up in the morning.
I believe it's just the other day, figuratively speaking, but just within the past, at some point this semester, I was in a lecture and I realized that I've hit the point in my career where basically anything I say in the context of the classroom can be construed itself as educational. And that was really kind of a moment where I'm like I can talk about, the phone book here. I could talk about skunks. I could talk about, rhinoceroses. I could talk about whatever. And I've spent so much time just trying to think about how to optimize my communication with people for an educational purpose in the lecture, in the online settings and whatever, that the background process that goes into that, I mean, I'm an educational motherfucker, man. You know what I mean, bro? See, and that's like,
I think so.
That's the jargon that I would sort of just slide onto the music podcast with Dan. That's like our vernacular over at that show. Yeah. That's an example of like the Today New Brunswick, Tomorrow the World podcast punk kind of vibe coming in on the much more educated, professional, and honorific, sometimes horrific, but never overhyped ENT endeavor, right? We're using similar tactics. We're using a similar instructional methodology of sorts, right? In its own way, the TNB endeavor is itself educational in as much as we're trying to hype music that we like. We want other people to know about it. And so I figure using the educational website, and I mean, aside from just efficiency of process, it's like, why not try using entertainment-oriented methods onto an educational format like what we're doing here, and then vice versa, right? I'm finding that increasingly in the sort of polarized, chaotic messaging that goes on right now across this fractured, dystopian kind of, post-social media kind of ecosphere that we all participate in to one degree or another. It's the jargon, it's the semantics, and the just complete gaslighting, the propaganda, the weaponized use of very benign terminology to disenfranchise people and justify political decisions that are either chaotic or worse. That's kind of the general, dynamic. That's the kind of general overview of where we're at as culture right now, who collectively participates in culture and perceives culture through a globally shared internet. And so, right, for me, kind of operating with couple of different podcasts, and then this other writers on writing thing. And God help us all, I have started a fake celebrity news website, which under no circumstances should people look at because it is truly beyond retarded. But it gives me so much enjoyment to just come up with something that is spoofing the algorithm. If you look at that stupid, I'm like, okay, if I was just a really retarded algorithm and building a website, and I'm like, what are the stupidest choices that I could make building this website? It was very liberating because calculated stupidity is actually a very cool thing if you're trying to get people to kind of buzz over to your, sort of project and go, oh, wait a minute, there's like a picture of Kanye West here, and with a pun, and then a picture of, I don't know, some bacterial infection. No words to it. It's like, huh? But then you can't unthink it, right? You can't unthink that visual connection. So I'm just like satirizing propagandistic forms. I'm just like, okay, social media, this is what you're doing in my feed. Here's a link that people can click on, and they're just going to see my version of what you're doing. And it's ridiculous. It's meant to be ridiculous because that encourages critical discourse of sorts. And I'm sorry, but I just that's the summary of a message that I shared with my Uncle Corey. That's like the verbal. He was like, so Matt, what's going on with this? And I'm like, bickety bam, right? So when you're an educator, anything you do is educational as long as you can justify it. And the other point is, don't say anything before you can justify what you're going to say before you say it. That's something else, right? Sorry, Doug.
Nope, that's.
Here we go.
I'd like to hit up the last article.
Please do.
Which is Martin 22, 2022, and it's their master's thesis about the effects of jargon.
Way to include
in school-based consultation. And one thing that Martin comes up with is it's a hindrance. Jargon is confusing to people that don't have similar background, similar training. Could be a hindrance to successful interdisciplinary work, such as consulting with school teachers. Because I have seen consultants go in and not talk the same language as school teachers and have school teachers just walk away from them in a way that I haven't had that issue.
Well, again, I just think that when people become precious about their professional terminology, the use of professional terminology to maintain certain silos of power is a known propagandistic tactic. Please elaborate. You look like you have something to say there, Doug.
I used the word epistemology in my PhD thesis.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I graduated. I got my PhD. I was an assistant professor on tenure track. And I had a guy with the gall to say, you use that word wrong. That's not the definition of epistemology. I was like, yeah, it is. Nope, it isn't. It's something else. And it's like, well, I got 5 professors that all agree with me. And you got your opinion. So why don't you go climb a rope?
I would just question the motivation of like, so that's the argument you want to have? Like, you don't have anything more constructive than that to make your kind of sticking point? Then it's just like get bent, basically. Yeah,
it was a get bent. It was, he thought he was smarter than me and he thought his degree mattered more than mine. And I'm like, bug off.
Yeah,
bug off. So it was just one of those things. So having Martin in 22 saying, okay, here's an issue that we identified over 150 years ago, still an issue, still coming up.
Well, I just appreciate, because contemporary from the University of Kansas, a master's thesis, I mean, this looks like you're tapping into actually some work that originates within an education program. of sorts, right? And so I'm always just like outside, just sort of the established kind of go-to journals and stuff. I always appreciate how Doug is always just kind of going into the additional and other and highly legit, but again, just using the open web, using open access journals. It's just, it really wouldn't be the same show without your approach to this, Doug. So thank you, man.
Oh, you're welcome. And I know it wouldn't be the same with what you bring to the table.
It's plenty kinds of unique and special up in here. Let us tell you what. So Martin, so Martin's the last one. That looks like the last reference there. We got our dope visuals here too. Are any of these visuals particularly yelling at you here?
My digital clutter this episode is different. It hits a whole lot of random stuff. The first one I really want to talk about is sciencegeek.net. There's a link there, and they've created an educational jargon device online. You can go and type random stuff in, and it'll spit out educational jargon, which,
awesome.
Yeah, here is a typical problem. If they can do this in one of those ridiculous ways, it's like those random name generators. It's
as soon as you're
like the Childish Gambino. Do you remember that? You know the Childish Gambino, the artist?
Oh yeah. I'm surprised you do, to be honest, but okay.
He's an actor as well.
Yeah.
He got the name Childish Gambino from an online name generator.
Oh. And he just went with it.
He was spinning through playing one night, and that popped up, and he's like, "That's my stage name. That's the name. That's going to be my professional name."
You have enhanced my knowledge of popular music. Well done, sir. Well played. That's good.
Yeah, I like the person as an actor and a writer too. So the fact that
he's a Glover, the actor. He's
Donald Glover.
Awesome. From Community and other associated projects. He's got a TV series called Atlanta, which I've been meaning to watch forever.
It's won a bunch of awards.
Right. Prestige TV. My problem is I just have no bandwidth for anything on a television screen. Like, I can't even sit through a movie now. It takes a concentrated effort just to go for 2 hours. Just like, and the experience of modern cinema for me is so deficient in terms of the storytelling. When there's a good story there, or if I'm with somebody cool to watch a film, then fine. But I mean, anything passing for television, like, it's just like, no, it would never occur to me ever. There's like one series every 2 years that I go, oh, okay, yeah, maybe. And then even that ends up just, right? So, but we sure do appreciate the pop culture in other ways. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So,
for sure.
Yeah, man.
Of the rest of my digital clutter, I like all of it for different reasons. And if go to the website, analogue-trope.ca/podcast, it'll be there. But there's one that's a moving company. It's a little cartoon of a moving company, and it's like Mammoth Moving Co. with a mammoth on the side of the truck. And the guy is talking to the lady saying, "Sorry for the misunderstanding, but I don't know how we could have made it any clearer. We only move mammoths."
Should have called first. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's so there's a bunch of random cartoons and stuff that I found.
Oh, these are some choice cuts that will be prominently and well displayed upon our website for sure.
And some of them are from the late 20th century, not even the 21st century. So I've been storing them for a while.
Oh yeah, well, again, we appreciate the clutter making its way into legit movement towards a further educational life and enterprise. So well played, Doug's digital clutter drawer, as always. And so we do, of course, have three final things before we're out of here. Three final things, Doug. Why don't we?
Yes.
What they are here?
Word of the podcast is jargon, because we've mentioned jargon how many times, and that's what we're talking about. Not abbreviations necessarily, but just jargon, exclusionary jargon.
Straight up jargon. We could not be more clear, folks, that this show has been only strictly about jargon.
The question of the podcast is, how can educators engage with jargon that welcomes others to the disciplines? That's not a full sentence. I screwed that up. I'm going to have to change that. When I wrote it, it made sense, and now it's not a full sentence. So for people to go to the website, it'll be slightly different once I have 2 seconds to take a look
I'm
at that.
just sitting here with another tab open, watching a blinking cursor sit in the thing in the Google Doc.
Yeah.
You can be sure that we have a robust collaboration on this and quality assurance process, because we are instructional design wizards as well as pals, and as well as being extremely handsome.
That's it.
All right. And we got the last phrase of the podcast, sir.
Is make competence awesome again. That I really like that.
I gather that through my social feed, just like, wow, did that actually happen? Like, this is kind of the era that it kind of jumped from, like, well, there's some sort of semblance of north. It's just now, it's just since January, it's like, okay, we're just going to like fill the gladiator arena full of sharks and tigers and werewolves and just, you know, throw in some clowns in there and some, it's just nothing goes by convention anymore. That's the only trope that's consistent. And it's causing a lot of, you know, undue concern. So I just like to, I guess, wind down my piece by saying, this part of it this year is meant to be an educational enterprise. We're not a hype machine. We have no viewpoint other than talking about educational phenomena and contexts that we find interesting. And we are serious about it. Doug is somebody who has spent a lot of time. We have 75 episodes in, plus 20-something interviews. All of them are stacked with legit references and notes. All of them are stacked with associated media, doing all of it put through a very, very robust, well-vetted and well-tested, instructional design process through me, right? In terms of putting together the video clips, in terms of getting those video clips onto YouTube, in terms of getting the audio product separately through the WordPress plugin. I mean, again, this is all low-hanging fruit in terms of the technology and approach. I could teach a teenager how to do any of this stuff within 1 hour in an in-person workshop. None of what we're doing here has any financial motive associated with it. This is strictly an enterprise where he and I really like each other. We really enjoy each other's company. We're really good friends. And we just have such significant personal interests and overlap. We're both from the same part of Canada as far as it goes, that we get to have this privilege of having a conversation, as often as we can through this format. And there's nothing propagandistic at all. I mean, I voted, as far as it goes, I voted for 3 different parties in federal elections in my 47 years alive. So, we're not libtard, we're not woke, we're not conservative, we're not, Martian, we're not, USSR or Soviet, Russian, Chinese. I mean, it's just, it is what it is, right? It's just 2 guys having conversations, hopefully finding an audience, hopefully finding some engagement. And we got dogs on the scene as well, so maybe that's the cue for me to stop talking. That's all I got, Doug. Is there anything else you got, my friend?
I got dogs barking, so I think it's time for me to go.
Off we get. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.